You've been told for years it wasn't happening, that it was just right-wing conspiracy. But today, it is official, the receipts are out, the numbers are real, and the cover-up just collapsed on live television. That's right, guys. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt didn't just push back. She detonated a bomb under the Democrats' entire healthcare narrative, because as of this week, a federal audit just confirmed what millions of Americans already suspected. Billions. Yes, billions with a B. Billions of your taxpayer dollars have been funneled into healthcare for illegal immigrants. Drop a "I knew it" down below if you thought that this was true all along. So meanwhile, families are sitting for hours in emergency rooms, veterans are getting turned away left and right, and American seniors are fighting over basic coverage. California alone has been caught running a $6.4 billion Medicaid laundering scheme. That's right, guys. This is not a policy debate. That is just theft, straight up, from the very people who built this country. Am I right? And so while Karoline Leavitt dropped the data on live TV, Democrats froze, reporters scrambled, the narrative cracked. What we're seeing right now, this is the unraveling of the biggest healthcare fraud in modern American history. And this is happening under the full light under the President Trump's presidency. So by this time, there's nowhere left to hide. In fact, I want you guys to grab a pen, grab a piece of paper. I want you to take some notes because I'm going to share some very important information with you guys. Grab a seat because today we're going to go ahead and expose exactly what they did, who profited, and why they're now panicking now that President Trump's team just pulled the plug. Hit the like button and subscribe, folks. We have a lot to cover. So when Karoline Leavitt stepped up to that White House podium, the press thought it was just going to be another routine sparring session, maybe some, nitpicking from, what's that woman's name from CNN? The woman who looks like a man. You know who I'm talking about. Drop that comment down below, guys. Sound bites, talking points, back to business. Wrong. Karoline Leavitt, she walked in with a binder full of receipts from the calm confidence of someone who knew the entire story was about to flip. Check this out, guys. She looked those reporters straight in the eye and she asked a question that they never wanted asked. So, are you denying that Medicaid money was gone to illegal aliens in the United States of America? Well, the room went silent. In fact, right then and there, one reporter tried to quote a 1996 law claiming that it was illegal to fund unauthorized immigrants. Now, Karoline Leavitt hit back hard. She said illegal on paper doesn't mean it isn't happening in practice. And so that's when she dropped the data that detonated across the internet and it went viral. Within hours, clips of her exchange, they were trending everywhere, and Democrats were scrambling trying to control the narrative, but they failed. Leavitt's evidence wasn't speculation. In fact, it was federal documentation. Under President Biden, emergency Medicaid spending for illegal immigrants skyrocketed 142% in a single year, guys. I'm talking about this was leaping from $3.8 billion in 2023 to $9.1 billion in 2024. But even worse than that, when compared with President Trump's final full fiscal year in 2020, the total had nearly tripled, a 196% increase. So this means billions of taxpayer dollars diverted away from veterans, seniors, and low-income Americans who actually qualify for assistance. Now, Leavitt explained that these aren't theoretical benefits. They're real reimbursements paid out to hospitals for non-citizens who enter the ER, receive treatment, and they just walk out with no bill. Can you imagine this? They're not even supposed to be here legally. They're walking out with no bill and they're receiving treatment, and meanwhile, the American taxpayer gets to pick up their tab. So this is clearly a system that's run on silence and denial. And for the first time, the mask just slipped. In fact, those numbers became the proof that broke the talking point that it doesn't happen. Well, right now, we have already confirmed that it does happen. In fact, the numbers scream louder than the spin. So here's a very dangerous game. Waiting until your plan changes, waiting until you lose your doctor, waiting until you get hit with a surprise bill. But what happens when you wait too long? And this is the pain that a lot of Americans are facing right now. And this is why I partner with Chapter, folks, because number one, most people aren't waiting anymore because they understand what happens when it's too late. They're calling Chapter now before something actually happens. Now, one of our viewers said, I wish I hadn't waited so long. Chapter fixed my plan and gave me peace of mind. Yeah, that's right, guys. So let me go ahead and ask you right now, are you going to keep playing the waiting game, or are you going to do what most people are already doing, taking action? Now, most people, they're dialing that phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That telephone number again is 909-563-8279. And when you give my friends at Chapter a call, tell them your friend Ron says hello. Now, nowhere is this scam more brazen than California. Ground zero for what insiders are calling the Medicaid laundering operation. It's crazy what they're doing over there. All thanks to Governor Gavin Newsom, of course. For years, state officials have quietly taxed managed care organizations, essentially insurance providers, and then they use that tax money to draw in massive federal matching funds, sometimes up to 77 cents on the dollar. Those matched funds were supposed to help poor or disabled Americans, right? American citizens. Instead, California rerouted that cash into healthcare coverage for over 1.6 million illegal immigrants, turning the entire program into a taxpayer-funded backdoor. Now, analysts estimate that this maneuver pulled in $6.4 billion last year alone. Think about how many years this probably went on. I mean, this is money that was meant for U.S. families, veterans, and children being funneled through bureaucratic wordplay and political loopholes. Karoline Leavitt, she called it what it really was: money laundering disguised as compassion. Drop a Karoline Leavitt down below if you believe that she's right about that. They dressed it up as healthcare reform, but it was really just theft in broad daylight, carried out with federal silence and Democratic applause. Now, then came the confirmation, and it was undeniable at this point. A federal audit led by the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services found that California had improperly claimed $52.7 million in federal funds for individuals who were never even eligible for Medicaid to begin with. These weren't clerical errors. These were deliberate policy choices that exploited a loophole. The audit documented how the state agencies coded undocumented residents as emergency eligible or temporarily covered, allowing the funds to slip through federal review. Now, once that report surfaced, the mainstream media buried it as fast as they could, faster than a classified file. But it was too late. In fact, the numbers were in black and white, and they matched Karoline Leavitt's warnings exactly. In fact, the audit destroyed years and years of denial. It proved that Democrats weren't just looking the other way. They were signing the checks. And for the first time, Americans had the receipts to show how far their government had turned Medicaid into the shadow subsidy for illegal migration. So under President Trump, none of this chaos existed. In fact, his administration shut down the loopholes. They enforced the verification, and they signed the now famous One Big Beautiful Bill. This made it crystal clear. In fact, federal dollars could only fund U.S. citizens, lawful residents, or those with verified legal status. So when President Trump's Department of Health and Human Services identified the Medicaid manipulation game and scandal, they went ahead and pulled the plug. And then what happened? Well, spending on emergency care for illegals flatlined. Fast forward to Biden's presidency, open borders, loosened verification, and of course, progressive governors greenlit to run wild. Within only 4 years, guys, just 4 years, illegal healthcare spending nearly tripled. And the numbers don't lie. In fact, Trump tightened the reins. Biden, he cut them loose. That's the difference between leadership that defends taxpayers versus leadership that sells them out for political points. And so now that Trump is back in office, Karoline Leavitt's message is simple. The game is over and accountability is coming. Now, the impact on American healthcare is not theoretical. It is visible in emergency rooms across the country. In Southern California, for example, hospitals report being bombarded by non-citizen patients. In Denver, Colorado, 8,000 illegal migrants. They made 20,000 visits to the city's healthcare system in just 1 year. I know it sounds wild, but stats prove this. I mean, they have left behind over $10 million in unpaid bills. UC Health's own health leadership admitted that across the board, access for everyone, including insured American citizens, has been severely impeded. Longer wait times, overcrowded ERs, doctors forced to prioritize by immigration status instead of medical emergency. And the cruelest irony, taxpayers are footing every penny while their own children wait longer for care that they are paying for. I know it sounds wild, but hey, Karoline Leavitt, she said it best. Every dollar diverted to fund illegal care is a dollar stolen from an American family. This is not a soundbite. This is the lived reality in cities where they're being overwhelmed. Hospital staff is whispering what politicians refuse to say out loud. So here's where this really hits home, folks. Every time Washington politics and politicians boast about compassion, it's really working class family Americans who are out here paying the price. Families who have paid their taxes their entire lives. They can't even afford a basic checkup. Meanwhile, someone who crossed the border gets a $10,000 hospital visit that you get to pay for. Veterans waiting months for appointments, seniors skipping prescriptions, parents watching their insurance premiums climb every year. Meanwhile, the government calls it equity. This isn't generosity, folks. This is betrayal disguised as virtue. Karoline Leavitt, her takedown was just excellent. I mean, it was just unflawed, guys. So Karoline Leavitt's takedown, it wasn't just political, it was moral. She said, you can't call it justice when you rob your own citizens of, to fund lawbreakers. How do you disagree with that, right? Like that line right there, it went viral because it captured exactly what millions of people feel. And, drop a yes in the comments down below if you agree with Karoline on that one. We're rewarding the violation of our laws while punishing those who follow them. And under President Donald Trump, the moral reversal is being exposed for what it really is. A deliberate strategy to buy political power with your money. Once Karoline Leavitt's data dropped, you could practically hear the alarms going off inside every newsroom. Within hours, the so-called fact checkers, they were rolling out identical headlines in all of the, think about it, CNN, MSNBC, they were saying no federal funds cannot be used for illegal immigrants. You notice the trick? They didn't say they aren't being used. They said that they can't be used. Now, if you're listening carefully, that is a legal technicality masquerading as truth. The media thinks if they repeat a law loud enough, people will just assume that it's being enforced. But laws don't enforce themselves, people do. And the Biden-era bureaucrats running HHS and CMS clearly didn't do that. In fact, the DNC talking points, they went out instantly. Anchors claiming disinformation, blue check journalists mocking Leavitt as misleading, and the same old outlets were rushing to bury the audit. But this time, the spin didn't work. In fact, the footage went viral really quickly. In fact, the facts, they hit harder, and the American people finally saw the gaslight for what it really was. It was an organized cover-up, not some misunderstanding. And so, just when Democrats thought that the story couldn't get any worse, boom, a thunderclap. A clip resurfaced from a 2020 primary debate. One by one, every Democrat on the stage raised their hands when asked if illegal immigrants should receive government-funded health care. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, every single one of them. That clip, buried for years, started circling again right after Karoline Leavitt's press briefing went viral. Suddenly, everything started to click. The media's, it can't happen defense fell apart because their own candidates promised that it would happen on live television. We saw it. We saw it with our own eyes. Conservative outlets lit up side by side with these comparisons. Democrats denying today what they openly endorsed back then. The hypocrisy, guys. The hypocrisy was undeniable. In fact, the timing was perfect. What Karoline Leavitt exposed with data, that viral clip confirmed with memory. And once Americans saw it, they realized that this wasn't an accident. It was their plan from the very beginning. A coordinated political choice to prioritize non-citizens while pretending to protect taxpayers. And so now the numbers prove it. Americans are done being fooled. According to the latest Harvard-Harris poll, 62% of voters believe President Trump and the Republicans are winning the healthcare showdown. Meanwhile, only 38% are siding with the Democrats. Even independent voters, who usually pretty much stay quiet on the immigration issues, they're now siding with Trump by double digits. Why? Because every time people are waiting in the ER, and drop an ER down below if you've seen this or experienced this yourself, okay? Every time people wait in the ERs, every time a parent sees a $300 copay for their kid while illegal migrants are getting free care, they know exactly what's happening and they're angry about it. Democrats call it compassion. Voters call it corruption. Poll after poll shows confidence in Trump's border and healthcare reform skyrocketing since Leavitt's press briefing. In fact, the same people once said, oh, it's not real, they're now watching their own approval ratings collapse. The political winds have clearly shifted, and this time the truth is carrying the flag. And so now, this is exactly what the government showdown is really about. The media keeps calling it a funding dispute, but don't believe that, guys. Behind closed doors, Democrats are demanding that Congress repeal the Trump-era protections, okay? The Trump-era protections that stopped this Medicaid fraud. In fact, they want those loopholes reopened. They want the verifications removed so that they can keep doing what they've always been doing, and they want the funding pipeline restored. This is why Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are both fighting tooth and nail to keep this shutdown going. They're not defending healthcare. They're defending the scam. You see the difference here, guys? President Trump, he called it what it is. A hostage situation. He said they're holding American taxpayers hostage until we pay for healthcare for people who aren't even supposed to be here. And this is exactly right. Democrats, they would rather keep the lights off in Washington than to admit that they got caught laundering billions through Medicaid. So this shutdown, it's not about budgets, it's about survival. Political, financial, and moral survival. Now here's the most dangerous part that most people don't see coming. If Democrats succeed in reversing the Trump-era restrictions, the spending floodgates reopen overnight. States like California, New York, and Illinois, they could immediately resume their funding match games, pulling, stripping, sucking out tens of billions of dollars from Washington while pretending it's all emergency care. Hospitals that are already at capacity, oh, they would be swamped. Rural clinics already fighting just to stay open, they would close under the strain. And so once that happens, it's almost impossible to undo that. Bureaucrats are going to call it compassionate policy, but media pundits, they call it equity. And taxpayers, they will never see where their money actually goes. Now, Karoline Leavitt, she warned about this directly. If they get their loopholes back, the fraud comes back with it. And this is why the stakes are so high right now. Trump's back in the White House right now, but if Congress caves, the same swamp that built this scam to begin with, they're going to rebuild it brick by brick. So here we are, guys, and the mask is off. The $6.4 billion scandal. It's not just a headline. It's a window into how deeply broken the system became before President Trump returned back to clean it up. Now, Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with the press wasn't about scoring political points. It was really about drawing a line in the sand. For decades, Washington insiders laughed off fraud as some complex bureaucracy, but not anymore, guys. The data, the audit, the receipts, they're all on the table. And this time, the American people, they're not looking away. Because when billions of dollars vanish into illegal programs while veterans are asleep in the hospital hallways, it's not politics anymore. This is personal. This is your money. This is your healthcare system. This is your country. Drop a 47 down below if you're behind Donald Trump's decisions and policies on this one. And now that the truth is out, it's on us to demand justice. Call your representatives, share the numbers, flood the comment sections. Let every newsroom know that the cover-ups, they don't work anymore. President Trump is already ordered new audits, strengthened enforcement through the One Big Beautiful Bill 2.0, a follow-up package that clamps down on every Medicaid loophole that they can find. But political pressure, it only works if we keep up with it. As Karoline Leavitt said, sunlight is the best disinfectant, but only if the people keep the light on. So keep watching, keep sharing, keep fighting, because this time, it's not just about exposing fraud. It is about defending the promise that America's money, America's laws, America's compassion should serve Americans first, right? So like, subscribe, share this video before it disappears from your feed, because you and I both know that they're not done trying to bury the truth.